Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the UES horizon and looked at the stars ahead. His ship was moving through space toward a system they had never seen before. This was humanity's first real mission to meet aliens who might be friendly. "Captain, we are getting close to the Zaffiran system," said Lisa. Park from her seat at the communications panel. She was young but very good at her job. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as she checked the signals coming from space. Jake nodded and walked over to where Ryan Torres sat at the weapons controls. Ryan was a big man with strong arms and quick eyes. He always watched for danger, even when things seemed safe. "Any signs of trouble?" Jake asked. "Nothing yet, sir, but their ships are much bigger than ours," Ryan said. His voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her science station. She was the smartest person on the ship and knew more about aliens than anyone else on Earth. Her face showed excitement mixed with fear. "The energy readings are amazing, Captain. These aliens have technology we can only dream about," she said. Jake had been chosen to lead this mission because he was good at making hard choices. Earth's leaders trusted him to make first contact with aliens who could either be friends or enemies. The future of humanity might depend on what happened in the next few days. "All crew prepare for first contact," Jake announced over the ship's speakers. "Remember, we represent all of humanity. Today." The UES horizon moved slowly into the alien star system. Soon they could see huge ships that looked like nothing humans had ever built. The alien ships were long and curved with strange lights that pulsed like heartbeats. "Incoming message, Captain," Lisa said. "They want to talk." Jake straightened his uniform, put it on screen. The main screen filled with the image of an alien. Unlike anything they had imagined, she was tall and graceful with skin that seemed to shine with its own light. Her eyes were large and intelligent, and when she spoke, her voice was deep and musical. "I am Queen Vexara, ruler of the Zahirian Empire. You have entered our space. Humans, state your purpose." Jake stepped forward. He had practiced this moment many times, but his heart still beat fast. "Your Majesty, I am Captain Jake Miller of Earth. We come in peace, hoping to learn about your people and share knowledge between our worlds." The alien queen studied him with eyes that seemed to see everything. She was quiet for a long moment, and Jake could feel his crew getting nervous. Behind him, "You may approach our home world," she said finally, "but no. This humans, few species have been granted this honor. Do not waste it." The screen went dark and Jake let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. 3 hours later, the UES horizon was docked at a massive alien station that orbited the Zaffiran home world. Jake, Lisa, Ryan, and Amy were escorted by tall alien guards through corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. The aliens they passed all stopped to stare at the humans. Some looked curious, others seemed hostile. Jake tried to keep his face calm and friendly, but he could feel the weight of their stares. "These hallways are beautiful," Amy whispered, looking at the walls that seemed to glow with soft light. "Stay alert," Ryan whispered back. "Beautiful things can still be dangerous." The guards led them into a huge throne room. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see it, and the walls were covered with images of alien worlds and great battles. At the far end of the room sat Queen Vexara on a throne that looked like it was carved from a single giant crystal. She was even more impressive in person. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight and a crown that held what looked like captured lightning. When she stood up, Jake realized she was almost 8 feet tall. "Welcome to Zephyr Prime, humans," she said. Her voice echoed in the great room. "You are the first of your species to stand in this sacred place." Jake walked forward and stopped at the proper distance. He had studied alien customs for months, but he was not sure if human manners would work here. "We are honored, Your Majesty. We bring gifts from Earth as a sign of our respect and desire for friendship." Amy stepped forward with a small box. Inside were samples of Earth's greatest achievements, music, art, literature, and scientific discoveries. They had chosen these carefully to show the best of humanity. Jake took the box and held it out toward the Queen, but as he did, he made a gesture that seemed natural to him. He placed his other hand over his heart and bowed his head slightly. The entire throne room went silent. Jake looked up to see every alien staring at him with shock. Queen Vexara's eyes were wide and her mouth was open in surprise. "What did I do wrong?" Jake asked quietly. Lady Morith, the Queen's advisor, stepped forward. She was smaller than the Queen, but her presence was just as strong. "Human Captain," she said in a voice that shook slightly, "do you understand what you have just done?" Jake felt his stomach drop. "I was trying to show respect." "You have invoked the right of eternal bonding," Queen Vexara said, her voice filling the room like thunder. "In our culture, that gesture means only one thing." She stood up from her throne and walked toward Jake. With each step, her presence seemed to grow stronger. Jake's crew moved closer together, sensing danger. "You have challenged me to marriage, Human Captain. By our ancient laws, you must wed me within 7 solar cycles, or face execution for dishonoring the crown." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Around him, he could hear his crew's sharp intake of breath. This was not how first contact was supposed to go. "Your Majesty, I did not know," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "On Earth, this gesture means something different." The Queen's eyes flashed with something that might have been amusement or anger. Jake could not tell which. "Ignorance of our laws is no excuse, human. You have made your challenge. Now you must face the consequences." She turned to her guards. "Take them to the royal quarters. They will remain there until the captain makes his choice, marriage or death. There is no third option." As the guards moved forward, Jake looked back at his crew. Lisa's face was pale with fear. Ryan's hand was moving toward his weapon, and Amy was frantically trying to access her data pad. "It will be okay," Jake told them, though he was not sure he believed it himself. The last thing he saw before the guards led them away was Queen Vexara watching him with those intelligent, dangerous eyes. 7 days to decide between marriage to an alien queen or death. Jake had faced many impossible situations before, but none quite like this. As they walked through the crystal corridors toward their fate, Jake wondered if humanity's first contact with aliens would also be its last. The royal quarters were more like a prison than a palace. The rooms were beautiful, with walls that glowed softly and furniture that seemed to float in the air, but Jake and his crew could not leave. Alien guards stood outside their door, watching everything they did. Jake sat at a crystal table and tried to think. 6 days left to make an impossible choice. Marriage to an alien. Queen he had just met, or death? Neither. Option seemed real to him yet. Captain, I have been working on the translation. Software, Amy said. She had her data pad connected to several alien devices. The guards had allowed her to keep. I think I can decode some of their ancient law books. Lisa was sitting by the window, looking out at the alien city. Below, the buildings were tall and curved, reaching up toward the sky like living things. Flying vehicles moved between them in patterns that seemed random but must have made sense to the aliens. This is all my fault, Lisa said quietly. I should have learned more about their customs before we came here. None of us knew, Jake replied. We did the best we could with the information we had. Ryan was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. He kept looking toward the door where the guards waited. We could try to fight our way out, he said. Maybe reach the ship with what? Jake asked. They took our weapons, and even if we had them, we are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Amy looked up from her work. I found something interesting in their history files. The right of eternal bonding has only been invoked 7 times in the past 500 years, and Captain, all 7 times the alien species chose execution rather than marriage. What happened to their home worlds? Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Conquered. Within 10 years, the Zapirian Empire absorbed them completely. The room fell silent. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. This was not just about his life anymore. If he chose wrong, Earth itself might be in danger. A soft sound came from the door, and one of the guards entered. He was shorter than Queen Vixara, but still taller than any human. His skin had the same soft glow, and his eyes were golden like liquid metal. The Queen requests to speak with Captain Miller alone, the guard said. His voice was deep but not unfriendly. Jake looked at his crew. Stay here and keep working on those law books, he told Amy. If anyone can find a way out of this, it's you. The guard led Jake through corridors he had not seen before. These were smaller and more private than the great halls of the throne room. The walls here showed images of alien families and peaceful scenes from their home world. They stopped at a door that opened silently, revealing a garden unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Plants with leaves of every color grew in patterns that seemed to create music when the wind moved through them. In the center sat Queen Vixara on a simple stone bench. She had changed from her royal robes into something simpler but no less impressive. Without her crown, she looked younger, though Jake knew that aliens age differently than humans. Sit, Captain Miller, she said, gesturing to another bench across from her. Jake sat down carefully. Up close, he could see that her skin did indeed glow with its own light, but softly, like moonlight on water. You are afraid, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Jake replied honestly. I'm afraid for my crew and my people. Good. Fear shows wisdom. Tell me about your world, Captain. What is Earth like? For the next hour, Jake found himself talking about humanity. He told her about Earth's blue oceans and green forests, about cities full of people from different cultures, about humanity's struggle to reach the stars. Queen Vixara listened without speaking, her golden eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Your species is young, she said finally, like children playing with dangerous toys, but there is potential In you, your majesty, may I ask you something? Speak. Why marriage? Why not just alliance or trade agreements like we planned? The queen's expression changed, becoming sadder and more serious. Captain Miller, there are things in this galaxy that your young species has not yet learned, dangers that would destroy Earth before your people even knew they existed. She stood up and walked to a section of the garden where the plants grew in twisted dark shapes. Have you ever heard of the void swarm? Jake shook his head. They are parasites, Captain. They consume entire civilizations, turning planets into dead husks. They have been moving through this part of the galaxy for 300 years. Jake felt cold. Despite the warm air of the garden, are they coming toward Earth? Eventually, they consume everything in their path. The only way to survive them is to be strong enough to fight or to be under the protection of someone who can. And marriage would give Earth that protection. Queen Vixara turned back to him. Marriage between royal houses is not just ceremony, Captain. It creates bonds that are recognized by galactic law. If you were my husband, Earth would become part of the Zephyrian Empire. Your people would be under our protection, but we would also lose our freedom. Better to be alive and protected than free and dead. Jake thought about this. It was a terrible choice, but he was beginning to understand why the Queen had made her demand. She was not just being cruel or controlling. She was trying to save humanity from something they did not even know existed. What about my crew? He asked. They would be honored guests. Your Dr. Foster would be given access to our greatest libraries. Your communications officer could help bridge the gap between our peoples. Your tactical officer would be trained in our military methods. It sounded almost reasonable when she put it that way, but Jake knew his people, humans, did not like being told what to do, even when it was for their own good. I need more time to think, he said. You have 5 more days, the Queen replied. But Captain Miller, no. I do not make this offer lightly. In my 300 years of life, I have never found a species that interested me as much as yours does. 300 years, Jake could not hide his surprise. I am young. By Zephyrian standards, I have ruled for only 2 centuries. In that time I have seen many species rise and fall. Most were too weak to survive in this galaxy. Some were too violent and had to be stopped. A few were interesting but not compatible with our way of life. She walked closer to him, and Jake could smell something like flowers and starlight. Your species is different, Captain. You have strength but also compassion. You are curious but not foolish. You fight when you must, but you prefer peace. These are rare qualities. Jake stood up to face her. Even sitting, she was taller than he was standing. Your Majesty, what if there was another way? Something that would protect Earth but also let us keep our independence. The Queen's eyes flashed with something that might have been interest. Explain. I don't know yet, but my people are good at finding solutions to impossible problems. Give us a chance to prove we can be valuable allies without giving up our freedom. Queen Vixara was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and Jake realized it was the first time he had seen her do that. Interesting, very interesting indeed. She gestured toward the door. Return to your quarters, Captain. Think well on what we have discussed. As Jake walked back through the crystal corridors, his mind was racing. The situation was more complicated than he had realized. The Queen was not his enemy, but she was not exactly his friend either. She was trying to save humanity from a threat they did not know about, but her method would cost them their independence. When he returned to the royal quarters, his crew was waiting eagerly for news. What did she say? Lisa asked immediately. Jake sat down and told them everything the Queen had shared. When he finished, Amy was already pulling up star charts on her data pad. If she's telling the truth about this void swarm, Amy said, then Earth really is in danger. But, Captain, I found something in the law books that might help. What is it? There are precedents for something called the Trial of Unity. It's old, almost forgotten, but it's still technically legal under Zapperian law. Ryan leaned forward. What kind of trial? Instead of marriage or execution, a species can request to prove their worth through 3 tests. If they pass, they become equals rather than subjects. Jake felt hope stirring in his chest. What are the tests? That's the problem. Amy said, the records are incomplete. I know there are 3 parts, but I can only make out pieces of what they involve. Lisa looked up from her own work at the communications panel. Captain, I've been monitoring their networks. I think I can get a message to the UES Horizon. Do it, Jake said. Immediately, let Commander Hayes know what's happening if this goes wrong. Earth needs to be warned about the void swarm. As his crew worked frantically to find solutions and send warnings, Jake looked out the window at the alien city. 5 days left to make a choice that would determine humanity's future: marriage to an alien queen, execution, or somehow convince her to accept a trial that might not even exist anymore. Jake had been in difficult situations before, but never one where the fate of his entire species hung in the balance. He just hoped that human ingenuity would be enough to find a 4th option that nobody had thought of yet. Jake woke up on the 4th day to find a guard waiting by his door. The alien's golden eyes showed no emotion, but his voice was respectful when he spoke. The Queen requests your presence for the morning meal, Captain Miller. Jake looked at his crew, who were still working at their stations. Amy had dark circles under her eyes from staying up all night reading alien law books. Lisa was hunched over her communications equipment, and Ryan was doing exercises to stay ready for whatever might come. Keep searching for answers, Jake told them. I'll learn what I can from the Queen. This time the guard led him to a smaller room with walls that showed moving pictures of alien landscapes. Queen Vexara was sitting at a simple table with food that looked almost normal compared to everything else Jake had seen. Please sit and eat, she said. Your human body needs proper nutrition. Jake sat down carefully. The food smelled good, like fruits and vegetables. He almost recognized when he tasted it. It was sweet and filling. Thank you, Your Majesty. This is very good. I had my chef study human dietary needs. We are not cruel, Captain Miller. We simply believe in strength and order. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then the Queen spoke again. Tell me about your military, Captain. How do humans fight? Jake thought carefully before answering. We fight when we must to protect what we love, but we prefer to solve problems with words rather than weapons. Even when words fail, even then we try to find another way. Humans are good at adapting, at finding solutions that others might not think of. Queen Vexara leaned forward, her eyes bright with interest. Show me. What do you mean? will present you with a problem that my military advisors have been struggling with for months. Show me how humans think differently. She touched a control on the table, and the wall changed to show a star map with moving dots of light. Some were blue, others were red, and a few were black. The blue dots are Zaffiran worlds, she explained. The red dots are Void Swarm scouts that we have detected. The black dots are dead worlds that the swarm has already consumed. Jake studied the pattern. The red dots seemed to be moving randomly, but he had learned to look for hidden meanings in chaos during his military training. They're not random, he said after a few minutes. Look at the pattern there. Avoiding the strongest defended worlds and hitting the ones with fewer ships. Yes, we noticed this too, but how do we stop them when they refuse to fight our main fleets? Jake stood up and walked closer to the map. You're thinking like generals trying to meet force with force, but the swarm is thinking like hunters. They want easy prey. So how do we stop hunters? You become the prey that fights back. Set a trap. Jake touched the map, highlighting a system that was lightly defended but in a strategic position. Make this world look weak and tempting. When they attack, you have your real fleet waiting and hiding. Queen Vexera was quiet for a long moment, studying the map. Then she smiled. The second time Jake had seen her do that, elegant, simple. Why did my advisors not think of this? Because they're not human. We've had to be clever to survive. We don't have the strongest bodies or the best technology. So we learn to think in ways that others don't expect. Interesting. The Queen turned off the map and looked directly at Jake. Captain, may I share something with you that I have told no one else? Jake nodded. I'm afraid, she said quietly. For 300 years, I have protected my people. I have made hard choices and won difficult battles, but the Void Swarm is unlike anything we have faced before. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out over her city. They do not want territory or resources like normal conquerors. They want to consume everything, turn living worlds into empty husks. My people look to me for protection, but I'm not sure I can give it to them. Jake felt a moment of sympathy for the alien queen. The weight of leadership was something he understood, even if his responsibilities were much smaller than hers. Your Majesty, why do you think humans can help? Because you see things differently. In the few days you have been here, you have already shown me new ways to think about old problems. She turned back to him. Your Dr. Foster has been asking my scientists questions that they never thought to ask. Your communications officer found patterns in our data that our experts missed. Your tactical officer suggested improvements to our ship designs. Jake had not known his crew was making such an impression. But more than that, the Queen continued. You have something my people have lost over the centuries of peace and plenty. You have the will to fight against impossible odds. You think we're that different? I know you are. Do you want to know how? Jake nodded. Yesterday, while you were sleeping, Void Swarm scouts attacked one of our outer colonies. A small group, only 3 ships, but enough to test our defenses. The Queen touched another control and the wall showed a battle scene. Jake could see alien ships fighting against dark, twisted vessels that seemed to absorb light. We drove them off, but it cost us 2 ships and many lives. When we analyzed the attack, we found something disturbing. The image changed to show microscopic creatures that looked like tiny worms made of shadow. These are void swarm parasites. They try to infect other species, taking control of their minds and bodies. We have medicines that protect us, but the treatment is painful and must be renewed. Often, Jake stared at the creatures. They looked like nightmares made real. But Captain, when we tested your blood samples taken for medical reasons, when you arrived, we discovered something remarkable. What? The parasites cannot survive in human blood. Your biology is naturally resistant to their infection. Jake felt his mouth drop open. Are you sure? Completely. We tested it many times. This is why I believe your species could be the key to defeating the swarm, not just as allies, but as the one species that might be immune to their worst weapon. The room was quiet as Jake processed this information. Humans were naturally resistant to the thing that made the void swarm so dangerous. No wonder the Queen wanted an alliance. But, Your Majesty, if this is true, why not just make a military alliance? Why? Marriage. Queen Vexara's expression became sad again. Because, Captain, galactic law is old and rigid. Military alliances can be broken. Trade agreements can be cancelled. But marriage between royal houses creates bonds that last for generations. What if the marriage was symbolic? Political union rather than a personal one. Explain. Jake took a deep breath. This was the idea that had been forming in his mind since yesterday. What if, instead of a traditional marriage, we created a new kind of alliance? Something that gives Earth the protection you're offering, but also respects our independence. The Queen's eyes narrowed, but not with anger. She looked interested. Continue. A trial of unity. I've heard that such things existed in your ancient laws. You have been studying our history. My science officer found references to it. 3 tests that prove whether species can work together as equals rather than ruler and subject. Queen Vexara was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her thinking, weighing possibilities. The trial of unity has not been attempted in over 1,000 years, she said finally, but it's still legal. Technically, yes. But Captain, you do not understand what you are asking. The trials were designed to be nearly impossible. They were created in a time when the Zephyrian Empire was smaller and more desperate for true allies. What are the 3 tests? A test of intellect where both species must solve problems neither could handle alone, a test of strength where they face a common enemy together, and a test of trust where they must rely on each other completely. Jake felt excitement growing in his chest. These tests sounded difficult but not impossible, and if we pass all 3, then Earth becomes an equal partner in a new kind of alliance, not subject but true allies with shared responsibility for both our peoples. And if we fail, the Queen's expression became hard. Then not only do you face execution, Captain, but Earth will be marked as a species too dangerous to leave alone. The Zephyrian Empire would be forced to neutralize the threat. Jake felt cold. The stakes had just gotten much higher. How long do I have to decide? 2 days. But Captain Miller, I must tell you something else. Even if you choose the trial of unity, it cannot begin immediately. The ancient laws require certain preparations, certain rituals. We would need at least a month to arrange everything properly. A month we don't have if the void swarm is coming exactly, which is why the marriage proposal makes more sense. It could happen immediately, giving Earth Protection right away. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Below he could see aliens going about their daily lives, not knowing that the fate of two species was being decided in the room above them. Your Majesty, may I ask you one more question? Of course. Do you believe humans and Zephyrians can truly be partners, not just allies of convenience, but real partners working together? Queen Vixara joined him at the window. For a moment they stood side by side, human and alien, looking out at a city that might someday be part of a shared future. Captain Miller, in all my years of rule, you are the first being who has made me question my assumptions. The first to show me new ways of thinking about old problems. If any species could be true partners with mine, I believe it would be humanity. Jake made his decision. Then I request the trial of unity. The High Council chamber was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The room was perfectly round, with seats carved from what looked like crystallized starlight arranged in circles that rose toward a domed ceiling. 12 Zephyrian nobles sat in those seats, their glowing skin creating patterns of light in the dim room. Queen Vixara sat on a simple throne at the center, looking smaller than usual, surrounded by the ancient chambers' vastness. Jake stood before them all, feeling the weight of their stares like physical pressure. Captain Miller of Earth announced, Lady Morith, the Queen's advisor, you have requested to invoke the trial of unity, an ancient law that has not been used for over 1,000 years. Do you understand what you ask? I do, Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. I ask for the chance to prove that humans and Zaporans can work together as equals. One of the council members, an elderly alien with silver skin and eyes like ice, leaned forward. Young human, the species that attempted this trial before you all chose execution when they learned what the tests required. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Jake thought of his crew waiting in their quarters. He thought of Earth spinning peacefully in space, unaware of the void swarm moving toward it. He thought of Queen Vexar's fear and her people's need for allies they could trust. I am certain the council members spoke among themselves in their own language, voices like music mixed with thunder. Jake could not understand the words, but he could feel the tension. The air. Finally, Queen Vix stood up. The High Council has agreed to allow the trial of unity to proceed. Captain Miller, you have 3 days to prepare. Trials will test your species in ways you cannot imagine. What exactly will we face? Jake asked. Lady Morith stepped forward with a crystal tablet that glowed with ancient symbols. The test of intellect requires your species and ours to solve the puzzle of infinite paths. It is a mathematical problem that has challenged our greatest minds for generations. Jake nodded. Amy would be essential for that test. The test of strength, continued another council member, requires facing a common enemy together in actual combat. You will fight alongside Zephyrian warriors against real threats. Ryan would be needed there, Jake thought. And the test of trust, said Queen Vixara, her voice carrying a strange sadness, requires perfect cooperation between you and me. Captain, we must pilot an ancient weapon. Together our minds linked, our actions perfectly synchronized. If we fail to work as one, we both die. The chamber fell silent. Jake felt his heart beating fast, but he kept his expression calm. I accept these terms. Very well, said the silver-skinned elder, but Captain Miller understand this. These trials were designed during our darkest hour when we faced an enemy that nearly destroyed us. They are not games or symbolic tests. They are real, dangerous, and men approve that too. Species can truly unite when all hope seems lost. As Jake was escorted from the chamber, he heard Queen Vexera call out behind him, "Captain, the preparations will take 3 days. Use that time wisely." Back in their quarters, Jake's crew listened with growing excitement and fear as he explained what would happen. Mathematical puzzle that their greatest minds can't solve, Amy said, her eyes bright with the challenge. "Captain, this is exactly the kind of problem humans are good at. We approach math differently than most species." "What about the combat test?" Ryan asked. "Fighting alongside aliens we've never trained with. We'll have to learn fast," Jake replied. "But humans are adaptable. That's our strength." Lisa looked up from her communication station. "Captain, I finally got a clear signal through to the UES Horizon. Commander Hayes is worried sick, but he's following orders to stay at the edge of the system." "Good. Send him a message. Tell him about the trials and the void swarm threat. If we fail, Earth needs to be warned." Over the next 3 days, Jake and his crew prepared in ways they had never imagined. Zahirian scientists came to work with Amy on understanding the puzzle of infinite paths. She spent hours studying their mathematical concepts, teaching them human approaches to problem solving. "Captain, their math is beautiful but rigid," she explained. "One evening, they think in perfect patterns and absolute rules, but sometimes the best solutions come from breaking rules in creative ways." Ryan trained with Zahirian warriors, learning to fight with energy weapons and coordinate with aliens who moved and thought differently than humans. At first, it was awkward and frustrating. "They're stronger and faster than us," he told Jake after the first day, "but they're also predictable. They follow training patterns exactly. Humans are more chaotic in combat, which might actually help." Jake spent his time with Queen Vexera, learning about the ancient weapon they would have to pilot together. It was called the Unity Engine, a device that required 2 minds working in perfect harmony to function. It was built by the first Zephyrian Empire and their partner species, the Queen explained as they stood before a massive crystalline structure in the palace's deepest chamber. 2 consciousness must merge temporarily to control its power. "What happened to the partner species?" Jake asked. The Queen's expression became sad. "They died out naturally over time, but their sacrifice helped save both our peoples from extinction." On the morning of the trials, Jake stood with his crew in the royal quarters, looking out at the alien city. "Today would determine everything. Are you ready?" he asked them. "As ready as we can be," Amy replied. "Let's show them what humans can do," Ryan added. Lisa squeezed Jake's shoulder. "Whatever happens, Captain, we're proud to serve with you." The test of intellect took place in a vast laboratory filled with floating holographic displays. The puzzle of infinite paths appeared as a 3-dimensional maze of light and mathematics that seemed to twist through dimensions Jake could barely comprehend. Amy worked alongside Dr. Kexton, the Zephyrian's greatest mathematician. For hours, they struggled with equations that seemed to have no solution, paths that led nowhere, and patterns that made no sense. "It's impossible," Dr. Kexton finally said, his glowing skin dim with exhaustion. Every approach leads to contradictions. Amy stared at the puzzle, her human mind working in ways the alien could not follow. Suddenly her face lit up. That's it, it's not meant to be solved logically. Look, Dr. Kexton, what if the contradictions are the answer? She began, working with the holographic display, not trying to resolve the contradictions but embracing them. Human intuition combined with Zapirian precision, chaos working with order. The puzzle suddenly collapsed into a simple, elegant solution that made both species gasp with understanding. Remarkable, whispered Dr. Kexton. You solved it by accepting what we thought was impossible. The test of strength came sooner than expected. Before the first test was even finished, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Void Swarm scouts had been detected, approaching a nearby Zahirian outpost. Perfect timing, Queen Vixara said grimly as she arrived in the laboratory, still wearing her formal robes. Second test begins now. Within an hour, Jake and Ryan found themselves aboard a Zephyrian warship flying toward battle. Alongside alien warriors they barely knew. The ship was sleek and fast, its weapons more powerful than anything humans had built. Stay close to us. Humans, said Commander Zareth, the ship's captain. These are real Void Swarm vessels, not training simulations. When they reached the battle zone, Jake saw the enemy for the first time. The Void Swarm ships were dark and twisted like metal that had been infected with some terrible disease. They moved in patterns that seemed almost alive, predatory and hungry. They're trying to land parasites on the outpost, Commander Zareth explained. If even one gets through, the entire colony will be infected. The battle was unlike anything Jake had experienced. The Zapirian ships fought with precise formations and overwhelming firepower, but the Void Swarm vessels were clever and adaptive. They're learning our patterns, Ryan observed from the weapon station where he had been placed. Captain, they're not just mindless predators, they're intelligent. Jake watched the battle unfold and saw what Ryan meant. The enemy ships were avoiding the Zephyrin's strongest attacks and targeting their weakest points. Commander Jake called out, let us try something. Humans fight differently than your people do. What do you propose? Chaos instead of perfect formations. Let us create unpredictable patterns that they can't adapt to. Commander Zareth was hesitant, but Queen Vixara, who had joined the battle in her own ship, gave permission over the communication system. What followed was a dance of controlled chaos. Human unpredictability combined with Zapirian power and precision. Jake and Ryan coordinated attacks that seemed random but were actually carefully planned, while the Zapirian ships provided the firepower to make those attacks effective. The way Void Swarm ships programmed to adapt to logical patterns could not cope with the creative chaos of human tactics. One by one they were destroyed or driven off. Extraordinary, Commander Zareth said as they watched the last enemy ship retreat. You fight like no species I have ever seen. When they returned to the home world, the High Council was waiting. The first two tests had been passed, but the third and most dangerous remained. The test of trust, announced Lady Marith, will take place at dawn tomorrow. Captain Miller and Queen Vexera will pilot the Unity engine together. The Unity engine chamber was deep beneath the Zephyrian palace, carved from living rock that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. The device itself looked like two thrones made of crystal and metal, connected by streams of energy that danced between them like captured lightning. Jake stood beside Queen Vixara as technicians made final preparations. Through the chamber's viewing portal, he could see the massive void swarm mother ship on the long-range displays, a dark thing the size of a small moon moving slowly but steadily toward Zaperian space. Captain, said Dr. Kexton, who had been working with Amy to understand the engine systems. The Unity engine requires complete mental synchronization between its two pilots. You and the Queen must think and act as one consciousness. What does that feel like? Jake asked. Queen Vixara answered, her voice quieter than usual, like losing yourself and finding something greater at the same time. I have never attempted this with an alien mind, Captain. I do not know what will happen when human and Zephyrian consciousness merge. Amy approached with her data pad full of readings and calculations. Captain, I've been studying the engine's energy patterns. It's not just a weapon, it's something much more complex. The power source seems to be the connection between the two pilots themselves. What do you mean? Jake asked. Stronger the trust and understanding between the pilots, the more powerful the weapon becomes. That's why it was called the Unity engine. It literally runs on unity between species. Ryan came over from where he had been studying the tactical displays. Captain, the mother ship has escort vessels. Even if the Unity engine works, we'll still have to fight our way through them. The Zaperian fleet will handle the escorts, Queen Vixara said. Our job is to destroy the mother ship itself before it can release its parasites. Lady Marth approached with what looked like two helmets made of the same crystal as the thrones. These will help link your minds to the engine. Once you put them on and begin the synchronization, you cannot stop until the mission is complete. If you try to disconnect while the engine is active, both of you will die. Jake took one of the helmets and looked at it. It was lighter than it appeared and warm to the touch. Are you ready, Captain Miller? Queen Vixara asked as she took her position in one of the crystal thrones. Jake sat in the other throne, feeling the strange material adjust to his human body. As ready as I'll ever be. They put on the helmet simultaneously. Immediately, Jake felt something impossible happening. His mind was no longer entirely his own. He could feel Queen Vexar's thoughts, her memories, her emotions flowing into his consciousness like water mixing with water. He saw her childhood on a world of crystal spires and floating gardens. He felt her loneliness after centuries of rule, the weight of responsibility for billions of lives. He experienced her fear of the void swarm and her desperate hope that humanity might be the key to survival. And through their connection, he felt her experiencing his memories in return, his childhood on Earth, his training as a space pilot, his love for humanity, and his determination to protect his crew. She felt his wonder at the stars and his dream of finding friends among them. This is remarkable. Queen Vixara's voice seemed to come from inside his own mind. Your species thinks so differently, Captain. So much chaos, but somehow it creates beauty. Your people's minds are like music, Jake replied, not sure if he was speaking aloud or just thinking. Ordered and harmonious, but with depths I never imagined. Around them, the Unity engine began to Glow, energy flowed through the crystal, and metal responding to the connection between human and alien consciousness. Synchronization at 60%. Announced Dr. Kexton from the control room. You need to reach at least 90% to activate the weapon. Jake felt resistance in his mind, not from Queen Vexera, but from himself. Part of him was afraid to let go. Completely afraid to trust so. Completely that their minds became one. Captain, the Queen's mental voice was gentle. I feel your fear. You are afraid of losing yourself, aren't you? Yes, but Captain, look deeper. Feel what we are creating together. Jake let his mental barriers drop. Further, immediately he felt something incredible. Their combined consciousness was more than the sum of its parts. Human creativity mixed with Zapperian wisdom, chaotic intuition balanced by ordered logic, two species becoming something new and wonderful. Synchronization at 85%. Called Dr. Kexton. Through the viewing portal, Jake could see the void swarm mothership getting closer. Dark tendrils were extending from its surface, preparation for releasing the parasites that would consume entire worlds. We need more. Queen Vexera said, the weapon requires perfect unity. Jake thought about everything that had led to this moment, the misunderstanding that had started it, all the fear and suspicion on both sides, the gradual recognition that they needed each other. Your Majesty, he said, what if we stopped trying to maintain our separate identities and just let go? That is dangerous. Captain, we might lose ourselves completely, or we might find something better through their mental connection. Jake felt the Queen's decision. Trust, complete, absolute trust. They let go together for a moment that felt like eternity. Jake Miller ceased to exist as a separate being. Queen Vexera dissolved into the same shared consciousness. They became something new, not human, not Zapperian, but a perfect blend of both species. Strength, synchronization at 100%. Dr. Kexton's voice seemed to come from very far away. The Unity engine erupted with power that shook the entire planet. Energy beyond anything either species had ever created flowed through the connected minds and into the weapon systems through sensors that were now part of their shared consciousness. They felt the Zaffron fleet engaging the escort vessels around the mother ship. The battle was fierce, but the aliens were holding their own. Now, they said, together, their voice no longer entirely human or entirely Zahirian. The Unity engine fired, a beam of pure energy, brighter than a star, reached across space. In an instant, it struck the void swarm mothership and penetrated its dark hull like a knife through shadow. For a moment nothing happened, then the mothership began to glow from within, its dark surface cracking and breaking apart as the Unity engine's power tore it apart from the inside. The massive vessel exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from a dozen star systems. The void swarm escort vessels, cut off from their mothership's control, began to flee back into deep space. Target destroyed, announced Commander Zareth over the communication system. The mothership is completely gone. In the Unity engine chamber, Jake and Queen Vexera slowly separated their consciousness, each returning to their individual minds. The process was like being born again, confusing, disorienting, but somehow wonderful. We did it, Jake said, his voice with exhaustion. No, Queen Vexera replied, her golden eyes bright with tears of joy. We became something greater than Either of us could be alone, Dr. Kexton. And the other technicians were cheering. In the control room, through the chamber. Speakers, they could hear celebrations. Throughout the palace as news of the victory spread, Lady Morith entered the chamber with the High Council following. Behind her, the elderly council member with silver skin approached Jake and bowed. The first time Jake had seen a Zephyrian bow to a human, Captain Miller. Of Earth, the elder said formally, "You have passed the trial of unity. Your species has proven that they can stand as equals beside the Zethurian Empire." Queen Vixara stood up from her crystal throne, looking somehow different than before. The experience of sharing consciousness had changed her as much as it had changed Jake. "The alliance between our peoples is sealed," she announced, but not as ruler and subject, as partners facing the galaxy together. Over the following days, the details of the new alliance were worked out. Earth would remain independent, governed by its own people and free to make its own choices. But humanity would also be protected by Zephyrian military might and have access to advanced alien technology. In return, humans would serve as advisors and problem solvers throughout the Zahirian Empire. Their unique way of thinking would help solve challenges that had puzzled aliens for generations. Jake was offered the position of human ambassador to the Zahirian Empire, role that would require him to spend years working closely with Queen Vexera to manage the alliance between their species. "What will you tell your people about what happened here?" the Queen asked as they stood together in her garden, watching the sunset paint the alien sky in colors that had no names in human language. "The truth," Jake replied, "that we found allies among the stars. That sometimes the best solutions come from working together instead of trying to solve everything alone." "And what will you tell them about me?" Jake looked at the alien queen, no longer a threatening figure, but someone he had shared consciousness with, someone he trusted completely. "That you're someone who puts the welfare of others before your own comfort. Someone who makes hard choices because they're the right choices. Someone who proved that very different species can find common ground." Queen Vexera smiled. "And I will tell my people that humans are the most remarkable species we have ever encountered, chaotic and unpredictable, but with hearts full of courage and minds full of creativity." Few days later,